Alright, time for another Q&A. So if you have any questions you'd like to see featured on potentially a future Q&A, you can always let me know in the comment section below, but let's jump into it. We got a good batch of questions this month. So Boshua says, do you think last season, or at least I think it was the last season, showed how easily the anime industry can go to crap? So many delays killed my investment in so many shows, it was getting ridiculous, and I'm pretty sure Nier Automata anime is still unfinished. So this is a really interesting question, and I think it's a complex answer. So is the anime industry overworked, underpaid, and there's too much anime being made, which basically if there's any bump along the anime production pipeline, things can go on indefinite hiatuses? Yes, but is the anime industry absolutely breaking down after the last anime season? No, not at all. Because there's only been one time in the past 12 or 13 years that I've been watching seasonal anime that there's actually been a major disruption that lasted longer than a couple of shows going off the air like Misfit or Nier Automata, and that was when COVID actually hit. 2020, I was doing maybe 2 to 5 shows a season, and honestly, hardly anything was getting released because the world went to shit. Now, is there too much anime being made? Absolutely. But when you look at the number of shows that release, like in terms of TV anime alone, not even including OVAs or movies, there's like 40 TV series per anime season. Is that too much? Yes, because there's not enough animators to go around. However, when only Nier Automata or Misfit of Demon King Academy go on maybe indefinite hiatuses, or we have to wait a couple of seasons to see the next batch of episodes, that's not the anime industry completely shitting itself. It's, yes, it highlights the problem, but no, COVID 2020, that was when things really broke down. And unless something like that happens again, I expect, yeah, maybe some shows you might like in a season might get delayed, and, you know, you'll see pretty common. Most shows have at least one recap episode, maybe a couple of delays. But no, it's not even close to the worst, which was when there was nothing to review in 2020. So Mr. Star Wars expert over here says, one question, do you read comments even if the video I posted the comment on is a few weeks old or a few months old? Sometimes I don't watch some animes right after they release, and instead I binge them once more episodes have been released, and then I watch the videos after. Yeah, so basically what I do is I don't really see replies. Like, that's one thing I don't really pay attention to. So on my YouTube studio, whether on desktop or mobile, I click comments and it shows me the newest comments to oldest. Obviously I can filter it differently, but that's the default. So whether you post a comment on a video that's 10 years old or I just upload it, that's what I see first. I pay attention for the first day of whatever the new videos I release, so like I'll purposely go into that video's analytics, but yeah, so it doesn't really matter. In terms of replies, so if you leave replies to comments, like pinned comments I do or other people, I'll never see that because I don't pay attention to those notifications, but if you're just leaving an actual comment on a video, I'll end up seeing it. Even if I don't interact with it, I'll see it. There's no real reason, maybe I just didn't have time to respond or something, but I see them all more or less. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name, but here's an interesting one. I've thought about it a lot the past few days, but what would you say was the anime you had the most fun experience with, or just the most fun anime you watch? This is a really good question because there's shows you'll end up watching that you just have a blast with. You're not going to claim that they're your favorite show of a season of all time, but it's a show that you might actually have more fun watching than some of the shows maybe you would claim as being some of the better. And honestly, I Got a Cheat Skill in Another World is one of those shows for me recently. Not ever going to be my favorite anime of all time, or the best show of this past anime season, but each week, especially like the second half of that show onwards, that show got goofy. It felt like a parody of isekai. Our boy was suplexing grizzly bears. He was beating up gangs. I mean, that show, every time you thought you saw the most extreme, somehow an assassin that tried to kill a princess ended up in a poly relationship with said princess and our main character, and the main character was actually a legit good person you wanted to root for. That show was wild and was hands down an absolute blast for me to follow. Not my favorite anime, not the best anime of all time, but absolutely one of the most fun series I've seen this year, just for pure excitement and fun. And honestly, it's kind of nice just having a show that didn't take itself super seriously and just had a lot of fun almost parodying what we typically see in these goofy shows we watch. Verandra says, keeping up with video games, which video game puzzle mystery was the most memorable for you? Mine was the star you got from blasting Mario into a wall in Super Mario 64 on the DS. I sneezed and fired the cannon and found it by mistake. That's a good one. I think honestly the N64 era had a lot of those because that was for a long time as a kid, that was my go-to. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time. Something that I still think about. So Ocarina of Time took me like 10 years to beat as a kid, man, going off and on, coming back to that thing. But I remember when you got to Dodongo's Cavern, I think it was the second area you'd go as young Link. I remember there was just like these little moments throughout the game, but one of them that I always think about was just, it's such a simplistic puzzle. There's this one moment where like there's a line of bombs and you have to place a bomb in the middle to set off a chain reaction in order to like reveal a staircase. Those little moments throughout the game always impressed me as a kid, just because it was like, it's a simplistic puzzle, but it's easy to overlook as a young kid. But the most recent puzzle for me that really surprised me, it's a shrine that actually a lot of people struggled with, but I felt like a big brain when I figured it out. So there's this shrine in Tears of the Kingdom where basically it's a bunch of rails that you have to grind across in order to get to the finish line. The last point, you more or less have to make something where the rail will end up dropping and then you'll drop to a different rail, and you have to keep it going all the way to the finish line unless you want to cheese it or do a different way. And the way you actually have to build that to have a, like, in the moment, like when you see the way you do it, you think, oh, that's super easy. But when you have a bunch of slabs and you don't know what to do or how to attach them, this was a lot of trial and error. But by the time I finished that puzzle, I just felt like a big brain, and I really liked it in general. So Spongy Games 3 says, can't expect this to be answered, but I'll try. Hey, here we go. We're answering it for you. Do you have any advice on how to binge watch anime? I used to be able to watch 7 episodes in one day, but now I can hardly manage 2, and I don't want to fall behind. I constantly keep pausing the episode because I can't concentrate that well, so 20-minute episode ends up taking me an hour and a half of my time. Yeah, I completely understand this. So my advice, so I suffer the same thing. Like before I started doing live reactions for the shows that I cover on YouTube, I had the same thing, like 20-minute episode, 40 minutes, because I'd get distracted. I'd think, oh, let's check the email, or oh, let's do this. And the best advice I can give, because the reason I don't have that issue as much anymore is because of 2 reasons. 1, I can't because I'll be doing live reactions for Patreon. And 2, I also have been very active at distancing myself. So you're going to have an issue where you probably want to check your phone, or you're going to want to go to a different tab on your computer, right? The best advice is to just don't. And it may sound simple, but simply training yourself to just say, okay, this episode is 20 minutes long. If you actually enjoy the show and you're not forcing yourself to watch it, put your hands behind your back. Maybe if you have a chair, like roll it back from your keyboard so you don't feel the urge. Because I go to the movie theater at least once a week or once every other week, right? And I never check my phone there because 1, I'm not an animal, and 2, I'm at the theater. I'm expected to watch the movie. So I never have the urge to do it. But sometimes when I'm at home just relaxing on the couch, I want to check my phone all the time. And it's put it at a distance. Put your phone on your desk away from your couch, or just actively train yourself. It's hard, and I get it. I completely relate. But if you force yourself to get into a habit, it gets a lot easier. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. So Cult of Gom says, my question for you, if you have not answered it before, is do you play any strategy games? For example, stuff like XCOM, maybe something even more in depth like Civ, and what would be your fave? So I'm not really huge into strategy personally. Like I have XCOM, Civ, I've tried them, I played a bit. I can pretty much play any type of game, but my go-to is always like RPGs, shooters, puzzle games and stuff. I do like that Rayman / Mario strategy game that they ended up making on the Switch. I never played the new one that they released, but the Rabbids one, so that's pretty fun. But in terms of strategy, like usually the farthest I go is stuff like, you know, turn-based RPGs like old school Final Fantasies, or even stuff like Fire Emblem and stuff like tactical stuff like that. But in terms of like XCOM style games, not usually, but you know, sometimes Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy, in those areas they can hook me in, but that's just me. So while editing, I completely forgot when I was in high school I was actually pretty big into Halo Wars, so just throwing that out there, Halo Wars was a strategy game I used to play quite a bit. So Zenvirus says, considering how open path Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are, do you think it could be adapted into an anime and create a good logical route through many of the story segments, memories, and story relevant side quests? Not to mention the mechanics. Absolutely. There's obviously the rumors that there is a Zelda movie potentially in the pipeline now that the Mario movie made $1 billion. And I think honestly, if Illumination did do it, if they do Wind Waker aesthetic, I think that could be very cute and fun. But if we're talking like an anime series, absolutely. Now, Zelda stories have always been fine, but I definitely find that the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they get a little more interesting, especially now that they added voice acting. And there's absolutely a way to do it. And I think honestly, we're in a great age of anime or just video game adaptations in general. So honestly, yeah, they could create a very fun fantasy series. But in terms of what would be the best, I think honestly a movie and like Zelda Go Rescue the Princess would be great, so I guess we'll see where the future takes us. So Roger Mullins has a few questions, I'm just going to speed run them. If you were to get isekai'd, what technology would you bring with you? What are some shows you stopped watching before returning in the future? What are all the Zelda and Mario games I played? And what are my favorite quotes from games or anime? So in terms of technology, probably a smartphone, honestly, just because literally if it works the same way as my smartphone currently, I would have access to all the information I would ever need. What are some shows I stopped watching but return to in the future? I mean, pretty much any long running show, right? You know, stuff like One Piece, even though I haven't fully caught up to One Piece, you know, watching stuff like that or even catching back up with Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff, always shows like those. In terms of like, if it's a shorter series and I kind of put it on hold, I usually don't come back to it, but if it's a longer series, that's usually a time investment I'll come back to. I've played every single and beaten every single Zelda game, and I've done mostly the same with Mario. Some of the Japanese releases for Mario I haven't, but I played most of the Marios and beaten most of the Marios. I played and beaten every single Zelda game. What's my favorite quote from a game or anime? I don't know. There's probably a lot that I would normally pick from, but off the top of my head, I don't know. We'll just go, "It's a me, Mario," from Super Mario 64. We'll just make it simple. So Belly Bump says, "Don't know if you've been asked this before, but if you found a Death Note, are you going to use it? And if so, where would you draw the line?" What's that? My lawyer advised me to say no comment. So Gravity Hero says, "What's a series that you think deserves more praise or attention than it gets?" Absolutely My Home Hero. I'm still pissed off with the anime community that My Home Hero, the anime community, they always love to say they want things different that aren't isekai, that aren't the same regurgitated shit we see every season. My Home Hero comes out with a revenge story about a father protecting his family from the Yakuza. Absolutely incredible thriller mystery show week after week. Hardly anyone watching it. Absolutely one of the best shows of the Spring 23 anime season and deserve 10 out of 10 reviews week after week. Don't at me. But that's it for this video. So let me know if you got any questions you'd like to see potentially featured on the next Q&A, and I might just save them for a future month. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more Q&As in the future. And hey, I have a Patreon where you can see videos just like this one early before they go live on public if that interests you. So consider supporting if you so wish. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.